Is it illegal to go off-grid? If you've ever looked at a piece of land and wondered what you're allowed to do with it, you've come to the right place. We get this question a lot, and so we've done the research. And it's understandable why people ask, because off-grid, it's a little bit different. It's fair to assume that maybe there's aspects of it that aren't quite legal. But the truth is, you can harvest your own rainwater, you can make your own power, you can grow your own food. But hand some of that homegrown food to a neighbour, install the wrong size battery, or build a bigger dam, and you might have crossed a line that you didn't even know was there. So I'm going to assume that you live in a house, or if you're looking at a piece of land, it's got a house on it, or you know you can build one. This isn't a video about how to build an off-grid dwelling on a rural piece of land. That would be a whole video in its own right. What it is a video about is how to become more resilient, more self-sufficient in the areas that matter: food, power, and water. That's truly off-grid living. But in each of those areas, it's a minefield, and there are legal traps that I want to help you to avoid. And so we're going to point them out to you. But the first little disclaimer I have to make, I don't know if it's obvious, I'm not a lawyer. Please don't take this video as legal advice. We've done the research, we've looked into the laws, we've been on our own journey of setting up a homestead on an off-grid parcel of land. But the laws change all the time. They're different state to state, even within states, they're different from council to council. So please do your own homework. And look, to be honest, if you're the kind of person that's into homesteading or the off-grid way of life, you're the kind of person that knows you've got to do your own research anyway. Okay, that being said, let's look at the first one, off-grid water. So the first area I want to talk to you about is harvesting your own water, or being off-grid as far as water is concerned. And you might be kind of going, how can you be off-grid with water? Doesn't off-grid mean electricity? And I get why, because we talk about being off the electrical grid. And that is the first thing people think about when they think about off-grid. But you will discover as you start to go down this rabbit hole of ways to be off-grid, that there are multiple ways in life that you can be off-grid. I want to talk about the three big ones in this video, and that is water, power, and food. And when it comes to water, there are some misconceptions. And I want to try and address both if you live in the suburbs and if you live on rural land, because out here on acreage, there are some exceptions that you have to be aware of and some special laws. But the first thing to say is, if you've ever heard a rumor or seen a video about it being illegal to capture your own rainwater in certain places, there's a very good chance you were watching TikTok and it was somewhere in America. In the USA, there are some states where it is genuinely illegal to harvest rainwater. That's crazy, but we don't have that here in Australia. In fact, in many states, it's a requirement that you do catch rainwater. In new builds, for example, some of the strictest rules are in places like South Australia, where you're required to put on a minimum 1,000 litre rainwater catchment tank on any new residential build. And a lot of states have similar laws. So yes, off a roof, into a gutter, into a tank, 100% legal. Can you drink it? Yeah, you can absolutely drink it. I'd definitely recommend filtering it, but can you supply drinking water to someone else? Absolutely not. The minute you collect your own water and supply that as drinking water to someone, it has to go through what's called a quality assurance program. Now, one of the questions that people often ask us is, what about dams? And this is where it does matter. There's something called a runoff calculation. It's based on how much water lands on your land and runs off your land, because technically that's a public resource, because water doesn't just stay on your property. Yeah, a lot of it does, but if you prevent it from flowing off your property and onto the next one and the next one and the next one and then down into a creek, you have prevented a public resource. And so there's some restrictions around that. And it will depend on the shape and size of your land, your average annual rainfall. It's pretty difficult to calculate on your own, but luckily there are some online calculators that you can use to work this out. And the thing to be aware of is this law changes a lot. And actually, farmers got caught out recently. In New South Wales, there was a calculation that said you could catch up to 30% of that runoff into your own dam. And then in recent years, they changed that back down to 10%. And if you were a farmer in the middle of constructing a larger dam at that time and you hadn't got approval for it, so it hadn't been locked in for your property, you might find yourself in trouble right now if you are collecting more than that 10%. In some places, like out west, you're allowed to collect 100%. So yes, generally speaking, on rural land, you can have a dam, you can stop a water course or a way that water flows off your property. but you have to stick within the limits. And so you need to check what those limits are. And there's a difference if it's a flowing body of water like a creek or a river. You might be looking at a piece of property and going, this is going to be amazing to set up my homestead on because look at all that water. I've got a river that never runs dry. You might not be allowed to use that water in certain circumstances. Generally, you're going to be allowed to use that water maybe for your household, for maybe your pets, maybe to water a kitchen garden. But start talking about watering crops on your property with that river water and you're crossing into territory that you definitely need to be licensed for. Now, another rural requirement is you might actually have to keep a certain volume of water in a tank in the event of a bushfire. And this often applies when there's a new build happening. So again, you want to check into what your local requirements are, but it might be that you have to have a 10,000 or a 20,000 litre water tank on your property that you don't use. It has to have a special connection that the fireys can use in the event of a bushfire, and you can't tap into that. You can't use it for any of your own personal or property requirements. It needs to be available for a bushfire. And then there's another form of water that you might have access to, and that's bore water, but you can't just go drilling a hole in the ground either. And the good thing about bores is that most bore drilling companies know this, and they actually help you through the paperwork and the requirements of this. But be aware, the common kind of bore that you're going to drill on your property is what's called a stock and domestic bore. You're allowed to use it for your livestock to drink, to do all the activities in and around your house, watering your gardens, your house plants, cleaning, all of that. So just be aware that bores, dams, creeks, rivers, and even rain that lands on your landscape, it's all regulated and you might find that you need to have permission to use it. But if it falls on your roof, goes into a gutter, is collected into a rainwater tank, that's yours to use how you want. All right, the second way that you might consider going off-grid, and in fact, a lot of us in the homesteading community started out this way, is off-grid with your food. And what I mean is disconnecting from that supply chain, growing that food in your own backyard. And not just a basic kitchen garden or simple veggie garden, even up to and including livestock, like my pigs behind me. You're allowed to do a lot of that in this country. In fact, it's a large part of our culture and has been for a very long time. And so it is protected under the law, but in recent times, it has come under fire. In fact, this week, we did a podcast episode over on our other podcast channel. I'm going to link to that down below, where we looked into some of the laws that are trying to sneak through to limit what you're going to be able to do in your own backyard as far as producing your own food goes. It's a bit of a shambles at the moment, and some laws have been able to just sneak through in certain states. But Tasmania, well, Tasmania kind of blew it because they tried to go really hard on some of these laws and it was ridiculous and got blown all out of proportion. It got picked up by the media, it got picked up by the Premier, and so it's been walked back. But we're watching that story closely because it genuinely was going to limit what people could do in their own backyards as far as grow food goes. Here's what you are generally allowed to do. Can you grow your own food? Yes, you absolutely can. A lot of people think that because it's food, that there's safety involved, and because there's safety involved, it's probably highly regulated. That is partially true. It's a fair assumption to make, but generally, it's when you involve the public. It's when you supply food. It's especially when there's any kind of transaction involved. So, can you have your own garden? Can you grow your own fresh produce? Of course you can. What about making your own food products? Yeah, absolutely you can. You can make jams, you can make chutneys, you can make cured meats. You're allowed to do any of that food activity on your own property for the people that live on that property. What about livestock? Can you raise your own livestock? In fact, can you even home butcher your own livestock? You absolutely can. But again, the law starts to cross over into covering that activity when you start thinking about that food leaving your property. And livestock, there's another consideration that you need to make, and that is you actually can't legally bring livestock onto your property unless you have what's called a PIC, a property identifier code. And in some cases, you need to go one step further. Like we have pigs, for example, we needed to be registered with Pig Pass to be able to bring pigs onto the property. The same would go for goats or cows. But home butchering, you can absolutely do home butchering. Where it crosses into illegal territory is when you supply that food. Now, I don't necessarily agree with all of these laws. In fact, I think some of them are ridiculous. The very fact that I can home butcher my pigs, I could get a pork belly and I could put that in the freezer. I could invite my neighbors over, get that out, slow cook it, put it in the smoker even, put on a big barbecue. We all eat that food. My neighbors go home. I mean, that food is still in their belly when they go home, but that is totally legal. If I take that pork belly out of the freezer and pass it over the fence to my neighbor, even if I didn't charge him for it, we didn't swap anything for it, I've broken the law. Do I agree with that? No, I definitely don't. And it gets even more ridiculous. In some states, you're totally allowed to sell eggs, for example. New South Wales, I know you are allowed to do up to, I think it's 20 dozen eggs. Say you want to set up a little farm gate stall at the end of your driveway, you're what's called a small egg producer. You probably have to register, there might be a small fee, but you're allowed to do that. You have to wash the eggs, of course, but you don't have to stamp them. You're not inspected all the time. You're basically flying under the radar, but legally speaking. Do that in Queensland. In fact, if I take one of my eggs from one of my chooks and hand it over the fence to my neighbour, I have broken the law. Do I think that's ridiculous? I absolutely do. But you need to be aware that in different states, there's different rules when it comes to food leaving your property. So definitely do your own homework and watch this space, because they're trying to sneak harsher laws in for home growers. But it is a form of freedom that you should absolutely pursue, and it is 100% a genuine expression of being off-grid. Now, on this is actually a part 1 video. So I started doing the research into all the states and territories to find out kind of who made it easier to go off-grid and start homesteads. And actually, the research has led me down some rabbit holes. So while this video is specifically going to be about, is it legal or illegal to go off-grid, generally speaking, in Australia, next week there will be a video on which state makes it easier or harder to set up a homestead and go off-grid. And you might be surprised as to who makes it easier and who makes it harder. So if you definitely don't want to miss that video, make sure you are subscribed to our channel, because that one will come out next week. We're about to get into the technicalities of how you can be off-grid, electrically speaking. Things you can and can't do, wiring, voltages, and all of that. But the one question you may have come here for is, can you physically disconnect from the grid if you're already connected? Is that legal? And the short answer is, yes, it is. It's called abolishment, and it's legal everywhere in Australia. You'll need to organise it through your power company, and it will cost you a few $100s. But you may decide that it's worth it, because did you know that you will still pay about $1 a day to remain connected to their service even if you never use their power? But just be aware, if ever anything goes wrong or you change your mind and you need to get reconnected, that's going to cost you thousands of dollars. So if it was me, I probably wouldn't bother. But can you legally do it? Yes, you absolutely can. Okay, off-grid power, and this is obviously the one that most people think about when they think off-grid. And it's also probably the biggest minefield when it comes to what you are allowed to do and what you aren't allowed to do. And some of it's obvious and some of it's not so obvious. Now, before I dive too deep into this one, let me tell you, we have some epic discussions over on our membership site. So there's going to be a QR code on the screen and a link down below. But I want to tell you about this now before I forget, because we have set up various chat spaces over there, including an off-grid power chat, including chat rooms where we talk canning and preserving, growing food and gardening. And so if you want to do deeper dives into these conversations, definitely go check out our membership. It's just $5 a month. There are some awesome people over there. In fact, we've got about 1,700 members contributing there now. And some of them in those chat rooms are genuine experts and are great to pick their brains on. All right, but let me tell you what I know about power. If we're talking mains power, this one is a no-brainer. When we're talking 240 volt, mains house wiring, switchboards, switches in your house, all of that sort of stuff, that's a Sparky's job. Always has been, is always going to be. Any kind of mains wiring has to be done by a licensed electrician. Where it gets fuzzy is, am I allowed to do my own off-grid power setups? Well, it depends. It's not a clear-cut answer. And in fact, there's some new laws that have come in. December 2025, so just last year, they brought in new specific laws about permanent battery installations. Of course they did, because the government were rolling out battery rebates, so they had to make sure they were covering themselves. We deal a lot with all-in-one standalone power systems. So we work with a company called BLUETTI. They're one of our main channel sponsors. They're not sponsoring this video, but I will put a link down below to go check them out, because we get some great pricing on their gear and it does support our channel. I particularly promote their products because they fit under the law. They're all in one. So they're technically what's known as a plug and play device. There's no electrician required because they sit under the cap of all of the legal requirements that they're supposed to. You don't have to worry that you've crossed any lines there. Where it gets fuzzy is when you start to do any kind of your own wiring, and you might think, well, aren't we allowed to? Like, I can go to a four-wheel drive super center, or we've got a new one in town just opened up called Kick-Ass. They've got some awesome gear in there. Online, there's lots of places that sell 12-volt gear, camping gear, four-wheel drive gear. Like, some of that involves wiring, doesn't it? Yes, it does. Here's where it's a little bit fuzzy. There are voltage limits that you have to stay under to be within the law. When it comes to mains power, but pretty much just stay away from mains power. If you're working in mains power, you're probably already exceeding the limit. But even DC has voltage limits. So there's two types of power. If you're looking into this for yourself, you will have worked out that most solar and batteries is DC, and the mains power is AC. DC, anything over 60 volts, and you're in licensed territory. You're not allowed to do it yourself. And you might kind of think, well, the battery's 12 volt, surely I'm allowed to do that. Yeah, definitely you are. If the battery's 12 volt, if the solar panel's kind of plug and play, even the inverter that you can buy from like a four-wheel drive store, it's technically a plug and play device because you're just plugging mains power devices into a unit, and the wiring that you have to do is just the red and black wire onto a battery. That's under that 60 volt limit most of the time. So you're allowed to do that. But here's where a lot of people get caught out. When it comes to solar panels, you're actually breaking the law. So I can hook up my own off-grid batteries. Even like we've got a big 48 volt system is our main off-grid system. I could even do the connection from the battery to the inverter. What else could I do? I think I could do the connection from the battery to the solar charge controller. Check me on that. But I definitely can't do my massive array of solar panels. That wiring, as soon as I connect more than 2 or 3 solar panels together, I'm definitely going over that 60 volt limit. If I'm hooking them, chaining them all together in what's called series, each solar panel is probably about 30, 35, up to 40 volts. 2 might exceed that limit. So can you do your own? Could you do your own little 12 volt cabin? 100%. If you kept everything 12 volt, you used all 12 volt appliances, and even if you just used a simple little inverter and you plugged mains devices straight into that, you could do that, but connect that inverter to your house main wiring and you're kind of in danger territory. And to be honest, I have to agree with this. Like, do I think that it's more dangerous than food? Actually, that's a bit weird because you can get really sick from doing food in a non-hygienic way. But I think most people understand basic hygiene, like hopefully it got taught to you in school or at home. But when it comes to electrical, that is a whole different kettle of fish. And there's a reason, there's a whole apprenticeship and training process for that. So if it's mains wiring, leave it to the experts. If it's 12 volt camping gear setup, have a go. If you're not sure, double check the law. So, is it illegal to go off-grid? Generally speaking, no. You can make your own power, you can harvest your own rainwater, you can even grow your own food. But in each of those areas, there is a line that you have to be careful you don't cross, and you need to know where it is. Is it a form of freedom? Is it liberating to be responsible for all of those resilience aspects of your life? 100%. It's the life we advocate for. But are there laws, restrictions, and requirements in each of those areas? Yeah. And it's your responsibility to make sure that you're within the bounds of the law. So do your research, do your homework, comment down below, and don't forget to check out our members site and the chats that are happening over there. And we'll see you on the next video.